To talk about next is our NADA 2022 outlook, and for that I'm going to bring up Jonathan Collegio, right? See, I told you by Monday, well, I'll have it down. Jonathan, take it away. I'll be standing by if you need me.
Is this on? Yes, we're going to do the 2022 NADA outlook with NADA President and CEO Mike Stanton and 2022 Chairman Mike Alford.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, a lot going on. First time we've been in the West Hall. I've had so many conversations with dealers and staff over the last few days. What are you hearing about the show? What do you think?
It's been great. Good feedback from dealers, from the exhibitors as well. Just great to be back in person and great to see dealers so happy and really a spirit of cooperation when it comes to working with our manufacturers, our vendors, and looking forward to, and that's what NADA is all about, looking forward and how we can get better together. So it's been a great week.
Mike, what are you hearing?
I'll echo and amplify that. Just energy, real joy at reconnecting. A lot of folks hadn't seen each other in a couple of years, and an incredible amount of real business taking place, and really big dialogue on the big issues of our industry. So.
Yes, several vendors have said that people are here to do business, so they feel like it's been a really good return on their investment.
That's incredible. So theme of the show is electric vehicles. We have Electric Avenue, all the stuff that's going on with educating dealers. So what, if you're out there in the audience, you're a dealer, you're management, you're a customer, OEM, what is NADA's message on EVs?
For me, and we've repeated it over and over again, you can't say it enough, we are all in, we are essential. And I think NADA this week has shown what are the next steps towards that journey, and we're supporting our dealers and providing them with the tools. And we also have heard from our manufacturers, our OEM partners, the rightful conclusion that brick and mortar dealers, omni-channel is the way to go forward in terms of scaling EVs. So to me, this has been a really important moment in this journey.
Yeah, it's been great to hear just that reassurance. I think common sense would tell you that we need, as manufacturers, they need us as dealers, but to hear them reaffirm that over and over again has been very, I think, reassuring for dealers, because let's face it, the future is always uncertain, and so you want to double down on the relationships that mean the most, and we got that this week.
Well, one of the amazing things that I heard in the general session yesterday in your introduction, Mike, was Mary Barra saying that dealers are a competitive advantage in the retail marketplace. Was that surprising to you to hear her say that?
It wasn't surprising, but it was reassuring, and it was so great for her to say that we were the strategic advantage as we go forward with scaling in the EV space. So
exactly. I mean, 3,500 GM dealers across the country. And so talk a little bit about, Mike, you had always said we're in this transition period. There aren't a lot of EVs in the marketplace right now, but we're going to get to a point where in the next few years there's going to be 40. Talk about that transition and what dealers are doing today to get ready.
Well, that's the good thing is we do have some time, and dealers are making big investments. We estimate conservatively about $2 billion collectively. A more aggressive estimate is closer to $3 billion. So dealers are investing with their capital, but they're also getting ready from an education standpoint. And NADA, we're here to advocate for dealers, but also to educate dealers. We partnered with CSE, we partnered with Plug-in America to develop some EV training, not product specific, but EV training that will be available to our sales consultants and eventually in the service lanes for all dealerships.
Mike, what does that look like practically, the preparation at the store level? I mean, you sell GM, Buick, GMC, Cadillac. What does that look like at the store level?
There's a lot of work that you have to do working with your local utility to make certain that you have the proper infrastructure to put the power sources. There's a lot of safety protocol relative to handling these vehicles, lift requirements, forklift requirements, and then there's a lot of training, right? There's a lot of Q&A involved with an ICE customer that's pondering the transition to EV. And I tell you what's really exciting, to see Michael Strahan on the stage yesterday, and he sees that Hummer EV from across. He says, I want one of those, right? The utilization of the products that are forthcoming, that's going to be the tipping point towards, our consumers absolutely wanting to have this product.
Now, Mike, before you were elected chairman of NADA, you were a previous chair of the North Carolina Dealers Association, but you've been intimately involved in the GM dealer leadership ranks for years. You kind of emceed the GM Make meeting yesterday. What happened there? Tell us about what you heard at that meeting.
You know, what I have enjoyed over the last, we didn't have a show last year, but over the last number of shows is the openness and honestness and the depth of content that GM leadership brought to this meeting. And there was really good dialogue yesterday. They really addressed some of the issues that the industry's facing, that GM is facing, and we'll follow up with our dealer attitude survey meetings. The participation of council at our Make meeting yesterday. So I think the dialogue with our OEMs is really positive, and we need to maintain that and build upon that.
That's a key theme of both your speech yesterday, as well as the outgoing chairman Paul Walzer, is the importance of dealer OEM kind of cooperation. One of the ways we do that at NADA is through the dealer attitude survey meetings. We hear a lot about it. I think if you're average dealer on the street, you might hear about these. Why don't we go behind the curtain and talk about, Mike, I mean, before you were CEO 20 years ago, you used to be in those meetings as a staffer. Tell us about what happens in those meetings.
Yeah, well, first off, I'd like to thank the dealers for taking the time to fill that survey out. But we've got a 70+% response rate, which is incredible. So when we as NADA staff and dealer leadership take this information to the car companies, we've got your voice. So keep filling that survey out. Now let me tell you what we're doing with that information. We meet with the senior levels of all the different OEMs. And we do this twice a year, and we're your advocates. We take that opinion and we share that with the manufacturers. I always like to remind dealers, we don't take guns to the meeting. We can't make them do what it is that you're concerned about, but we can certainly communicate that, and it's that open dialogue. And I just want the dealers to understand that we're hitting the manufacturers with that at least, well, 2 times a year, but with several manufacturers, we're meeting more frequently than that. And what it does is it allows us to have that consistent line of communication so that when things do arise, we know who to call, we know who to talk to, and we can at least get their read on it very quickly.
Mike, I mean, you were Chevrolet line rep a couple of years ago. What's your experience in those meetings?
There's 3 components to that meeting that I think are so productive. One is peer comparison, right? So every OEM sees how they rank relative to peers on the same set of questions. 2 are the verbatims. That's the real questions, the answers that dealers gave in terms of, and we are privy to those verbatims. They have become so constructive, so thoughtful and firm, but well articulated. And I promise you, the OEM leadership reads every one of those verbatims, so they're so important. And then we try to dialogue again on the big issues that are impacting dealers in our operations, and where we need assistance going forward, and how we can help our OEMs going forward. So. One other thing I'd like to point out that I think has been so constructive with, our captive, General Motors Financial, they started utilizing NADA to survey GM dealers on a more frequent basis on key issues as they continue to scale and grow their captive. And it's been really, really good partnership. They really have benefited from the input.
And then there's another element I'd like to mention, much like our 20 group, composites, where we do a force ranking, and then dealers learn from who's doing the best, and those dealers will share that information. We do the same thing with the dealer attitude survey. We do a force ranking of the manufacturers, and there are some that do an excellent job according to their dealers, and there's some that have a lot of opportunity. So that gives the ones with the opportunity a roadmap maybe to talk to some of their dealers that represent these other OEMs. So it's just this constant let's get better through a process. So continuous improvement is the goal.
I remember going to one of the General Motors meetings, I think 2018, 2019, with you, Mike, and one of the things that I enjoyed about it was that you go through all the survey data, they get to see the force rankings, they get to see improvement or where they can do better, but then it also provides an opportunity for the NADA leadership and the OEM leadership to talk about issues specific, that are going on in that moment. So we had a great conversation about technician recruitment. I don't know if you remember that. And those type of topical conversations can also come up at the end of the meetings too. Isn't that correct?
Absolutely, and there's been a great outcome there. GM has stepped forward with a program working with the dealer body on technician retention and recruitment and compensation, quite frankly, to help make certain that we're competitive as we go forward. So, such an important component to workforce in our space, and will continue to be as we go forward.
Excellent. NADA, of course, we have the show, Education, Academy, 20 groups. The main thing that, we're headquartered out of Washington, D.C. One of the main things we do is advocacy. Not so much the topic of the NADA show, but definitely one of the core things we do at NADA. Talk about, Mike Stanton, what is going on the advocacy front in Washington, D.C. with NADA today?
Well, yeah, we as NADA are the dealer voice. I mean, Jonathan does a heck of a job with his team regarding the consumers and in the public kind of arena. But we also have a team of dealer advocates on the legislative front. We've got an office right downtown. You could almost hit a 9-iron and hit the Capitol building. Not that we've ever tried that. But we've also got a regulatory team of experts that are constantly advocating. That's their full-time job. I like to say, hey, we work for you. So if you don't like what's happening, you let us know. You can fire us. But we've got these relentless team of dealer advocates and with the OEMs as well. Now you asked specifically about kind of what's going on in DC.
What are the legislative and advocacy priorities today?
Yeah, well, I do like to. I take comfort in that, and I have great job security because our Congress people, our lawmakers, our regulators, they don't understand your business, and it's a consistent kind of drumbeat where we have to educate these folks and let them know, the contributions that you make to your local communities, the jobs that over 1 million jobs. I mean, you all are a powerful voice, as you know, and we've got these great relationships with the states, and if we get aligned, and we are aligned, I mean, that is just one powerful voice. So we are working on LIFO right now. We've had some frustration with the Department of Treasury. We think we've got some opportunities to maybe write some legislation that'll help get us there. We're still fighting the fight. I can't predict the outcome. I've been told not to use the word optimistic, but hopeful. So that's where we are right now with the battle in LIFO. And then, of course, with electric vehicles, we want to make sure that there are incentives car companies are investing, dealers are investing, the government's going to invest to help get us there. We want to make sure that their investment is put to good use, incentives that actually work in the showroom, that are easy for a consumer to understand, that move product, because that's the business that we're in.
Mike, dealerships are obviously super capital intensive business. You need to have working capital to be able to pay the bills, to make sure that you can make investments wherever you need to. Can you talk about the impact of LIFO on the working capital of a dealership and why it's so important to get this thing taken care of?
Absolutely. Dealers had a great year last year. OEMs had a great year last year. Dealers are going to pay, as they should, an extraordinary amount of taxes on that operating income. That's not an issue. The issue here is an accounting, last in, first out accounting doesn't anticipate that 95% of your inventory is going to eviscerate and be gone. So that LIFO reserve all of a sudden coming in as a paper gain, most of these companies are pass-throughs. So that's 50% of that amount is going out. That's the working capital. That's the deployable, investable capital of an enterprise that one-time hit goes to the government. So we've been educating, we've been advocating, and one of the things that I think our industry does exceptionally well is when we align, you can see the power of NADA, you see the power of the dealer body and the influence that we have. So as we go forward, I think there could be more LIFO type issues that we need to come together on the Hill, and we need to advocate for.
And also, I think that there was also a lot of dealer OEM collaboration on the LIFO issue as well, right?
The OEM stepped up in a big way, and that's probably Mike's question to answer, but I was so thrilled by that. Yeah, that's been a collaborative approach because they get it. They see the impact that this one-time dynamic's going to have on working capital going out of the balance sheets of their dealer body.
Yeah, that's a good example of how we need to educate. I mean, we all know out in the audience and in our industry that you really can't make a car today that's 100% domestic. Even the ones that are built here have parts that are coming from all over the world. And our lawmakers didn't understand that. So the manufacturers stepped up with a letter, because it's more credible coming from them. They actually make the vehicles, and that helped, in our advocacy to get this done right. And Treasury has the power to do this. It's just, as I mentioned before, it's just been a bit frustrating, but we just got to keep the fight.
Also, I mean, that's one of the, that is just an example of the critical importance of having an open, collaborative dialogue with the OEMs, as opposed to, I don't know, maybe in generations previous, kind of like, fists coming out. I mean, that's one of the reasons why it's important to be collaborative.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've spent a lot of time, at least in my career, advocating on your behalf with the OEMs, but talking about, this or that, who owns the customer. We need to focus as an industry on how we can work better together to take care of the customer, because the customer doesn't care. If they buy a particular product, they just want a great experience. And that's where our focus is going to be.
Mike, auto retail is a huge industry, $1 trillion. It's incredibly fragmented. There are so many, 16,500 dealerships out there, 1.2 million employees, dealerships, every community across the country. You're going to be leading that. What does your next year look like? What are you most looking forward to doing?
So real simple. Every dealer that I've spoken to here and leading up to this show has been so excited about how we as an industry came through the pandemic, how we worked through keeping our employees on the payroll, working through PPP, being essential, what have you. And I think everybody feels really, really good about the year that they had last year. At the same time, every dealer I talk to has some anxiety about the franchise model, the business model going forward. So by the time we get to Dallas, by the time my term is over, I would love that everybody would feel some better clarity as to the way forward, these future revenue streams, how we work together with data and ecosystem and omni-channel sort of approach to retailing going forward. Having a really better feel for the runway of ICE and the true scale of EVs. So I also hope that everybody who's in this space, now that we're coming out from not wearing masks and we're back together in person, really engages, however they want to, whether it's in their local communities, whether it's a state association, whether it's within ADA, whether it's going to the Hill, when we go to Washington. But I think this is a time for us all to really look outward and look ahead, and as Michael Strahan says, you really focus on those things we can influence in the next years.
Well, and we don't know what's coming our way tomorrow, or a month or two down the road, or Dallas next year. So we also just have to remain open and flexible, because we can't predict the future, and the last couple of years has certainly proved that out.
Mike Stanton, you came to the helm of NADA about 15 months ago. A year ago, we were in Chicago doing the virtual show. Mike, of course, just mentioned Dallas next year. What have your 15 months been like?
Oh, it's been incredible. I mean, as I've said when I first got the opportunity, I'm a big NADA fan. I've been with the association really since 2000. I took a little bit of a leave of absence when we sold the guidebook to J.D. Power, but this is a dream job for me. I love working for dealers, and the amount of support that I have received from dealers and from our ATAE community and the employees has been very humbling, and I'm just proud as heck to be able to represent the employees of NADA. They are an amazing team, and I'm a big believer that the dealers are the greatest entrepreneurs on the planet, and it's just a pleasure to represent them, and I'm very proud to do so.
One of the strategic goals of NADA is to increase dealer engagement. And there's no dealer in America who's been more engaged over the last decade than Mike Alford with General Motors, with your state association. Talk about the importance of getting involved locally with your state association as well as NADA, if you could, Mike.
It's not only is it important, it's the benefits you get out of that type of interaction are immeasurable. The friendships you make, the knowledge you gain, the opportunity to give back to this industry that's so good to us. And but you also become aware of the issues, and you also understand how the sausage is made, if you will, both at the State House, and then through that immersion, you're going to learn a lot about what NADA does at the federal level. I would strongly encourage all the folks that are under 40 that are in this space to really open their aperture and say, that's a big part of what I need to commit myself to, is giving back to this industry, because they will influence, how we go forward and how we're structured going forward and how we make our living going forward. So it's really important.
Mike, before we leave, what are some practical, tangible ways that dealers can get more engaged with NADA?
Well, I think as Mike Alford said, start at the state level, and we need your engagement. You all have such influence in your local communities, and that's really how things get done. We as staff, we can, kind of tee things up, but it's a dealer making that phone call because it's based on years and years of a good relationship at the right moment in time that often carries the day on a particular issue. And it can be one dealer making one connection that gets us a meeting at the Treasury, Department of Treasury. And that could change LIFO for all dealers. So we need your help. We're only as good as our grassroots, and our grassroots are excellent, but we need to continue to focus there and be more engaged. So please, help us help you, as the saying goes.
Mike Alford, Mike Stanton, thank you so much for joining. Gentlemen, thank you for this panel. Let's give them a round of applause.